All right, boys and girls. So, in case you haven't noticed, we've been studying a lot about geometry. Geometry is the study of shapes and lines and points, surfaces, figures. Um, all that stuff involves a lot of vocabulary. So, it's really important for you to learn the terms, understand what the terms are, because there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of quiz questions, test questions that assume that you know what these terms mean. So I'm going to kind of front load some terms that are important for you to understand. The first one is congruent. Congruent is a term that means exactly the same. Here's two different triangle shapes, and they are actually congruent because they are the same shape. If you put one over the other, they are congruent. You could also say that the angles and sides are all congruent. Like this side length and this side length is congruent. This angle right here is congruent to this angle. Um, and then that kind of a very similar word is equivalent, which means equal in value. So you could say these sides are congruent, and you could also say these sides are equivalent. Symmetrical, that's another term that you need to understand. Symmetrical is when one side of the shape is exactly the same but the opposite. So if you fold it across this imaginary line of symmetry, if I if you can imagine me closing a book and this is like the crack of the book, um, they would match up perfectly and exactly the opposite. So this shape right here, this arrow shape, has exactly one line of symmetry. There's also what's called rotational symmetry, where there's a center point and the shape can rotate around that center point. And when it does flip around 180 degrees, it is the exact same shape. See how the shape is not changing, whether it's this way or this way. This arrow does not have rotational symmetry. You would have to rotate it completely around 360 degrees in order for that to get back to the same exact shape. Therefore, it does not have rotational symmetry. This shape does not have regular symmetry because if you fold it, this point is not going to match up with this point. Parallel, it means side by side, having the same distance between continuously. So these two lines are parallel. They're going in the same exact direction. If they continued on forever, they would never get closer together or further apart. They're always the same distance apart. Parallel lines do not have to be the same exact length. They could be spread out like this. These are still parallel. Opposite sides is a term that you need to understand. It just means on a quadrilateral, the sides that are directly across from each other, like these red sides, and then these two black sides are opposite sides. Adjacent sides means sides that are right next to each other, sharing the same endpoint. So this side is adjacent to this side. And then you have these three terms are basically the same thing: right angle, square corner, 90-degree angle. That just means one side is going, this way, and then in this instance, exactly vertical, and then there's another one going horizontal. However, it does not have to be horizontal and vertical. I'm going to group these and I'll show you. This is still a 90-degree angle, right angle, square corner, whatever you want to call it. But you should know that all three of those things are exactly the same. And then another term that's pretty much the same is perpendicular. And that just means that there are lines or sides that meet at a 90-degree angle. So if this continued, it would intersect this line at a 90-degree angle. These are perpendicular lines. They could be over here. They could be touching. Just know that perpendicular also means right angle, square corner, 90-degree angle. And then another term is a regular polygon. You need to know what a regular polygon is. A polygon in which all sides and angles are congruent. And we learned congruent earlier, and that just simply means exactly the same. So if you look at this triangle, it has 3 sides and they are all exactly the same length. It also has 3 angles with exactly the same um, angle measure. So even if this is a larger triangle, all 3 sides are the same and all 3 angles are the same. So this is a regular triangle. Same thing with this. This is a regular quadrilateral. It has 4 sides, so it's a quadrilateral. All 4 angles are 90 degrees. Therefore, it is a regular quadrilateral. These are the shapes that when you're learning your shapes, when you were in diapers, you learn that that's a square, that's a triangle, this is a pentagon, this is a regular pentagon. There are other pentagons. This is one that happens to have all 5 sides the same length and all 5 angles exactly the same measure. Here's a regular hexagon. So those are some terms that you should know in order to be successful with the geometry lessons.